Hello, welcome to the Charterstone Times, the only official podcast detailing the goings-on of the Charterstone apartment complex. Hello everybody, and welcome once again to the Charterstone Times. Today is Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. And we, here at the Charterstone Times, would like to wish you both a happy hump day, as well as the end of the month of July. This is just a reminder that if you have not yet paid your rent for the Charterstone apartment complex, that will be due tomorrow, August 1st. Now, without further ado, let's check in with our favorite residents. Yesterday, Wilbur Weston perhaps ended his arc after a long bit of character growth. He told Willa that he spoke to her brother and that he is happy and thanked him. Wilbur Weston is quite pleased with this update. If we look back in time at how Wilbur Weston has grown over this arc, we can see a man who was put to his absolute limits. He started with his daughter, Dawn Weston, going to visit her mother for quite a few weeks. At first, he was very lonely, living in his castle alone. He went out to do such boring errands as buying fish food for his pet fish, as well as walking the trails. While doing so, he ran into frequent reminders of just how lonely and pathetic his life now is. All of his ex-girlfriends were with their new boyfriends, and took no shortage in glee in rubbing that in his pathetic little face. He ended up imagining he was a superhero, battling a monkeyfied version of one of them, and going as far in his delirium as pushing an old man into the street, ultimately saving his life. Wilbur returned home and decided he should inflict the torment of dating him on yet another lonely, innocent woman. He opted to continue this track and went on a blind dating website. He went on a date with one woman one time before it ended disastrously as he forgot his wallet and she ran off to make out with the nearest single man. He got home depressed and eventually found out that his pet goldfish, Stellan, clearly his preferred and favored one, had passed away. He then went into a few weeks long mourning the death of his goldfish Stellan. Despite having a perfectly living one Willa still in the tank that he seemingly neglected for the entirety of the time, he sat around home, ordering in and eating junk food for 6+ weeks, until beloved resident Mary Worth stopped in to visit him. She finally pulled the neighborhood together for a pity wake, and ended up snapping Wilbur Weston out of his funk. How will things be going at that point? Well, that's a relatively easy answer. Dawn returned from her break and recapped her visit with her mother, which did not go as planned. They went to karaoke, and Wilbur finally had a dream where he awoke to realize that Stellan loved him. He had a bit of a nocturnal emission that night as he shouted out, "I am content." And that shows us the growth of Wilbur Weston. Now, jumping over to our developing arc, Stellan's namesake, Stella, aka Estelle, is currently making out with her hot veterinarian boyfriend, Dr. Ed. He is rather wealthy and manages the office which she works in, seemingly for free, solely so she can spend time with him. This inter-office romance would be frowned upon in most work environments, including the Charterstone Times. And we must caution you that this is not an advised relationship, since it gives an unfair power dynamic to the employer, aka Dr. Ed. When we last left them off, they were locked, lip to lip, tongue to tongue, tooth to tooth, as they moaned each other's names. Will they keep their clothes on? Let's tune in to find out. We zoom out. They are no longer kissing. It turns out that Mr. Ed and Estelle have been making out in the waiting room of the veterinarian's office, which they both work in. Estelle has been holding on to a dog this entire time. Thanks, Estelle, for taking Mrs. Johnson's retriever for a walk. He can be a handful, he says, perhaps nudging Estelle to think of the other handfuls which he wishes he had in his hands right now. I don't mind, Ed, she replies, and besides, while Mrs. Johnson's retriever jumps onto Ed, seemingly pawing for Ed's Johnson. Jordy's one of my favorite dogs. He's the best, Estelle replies, giving us a name for this golden retriever. You're the best, Estelle. Truly, Mr. Ed beams at her. How will this relationship continue? Let's tune in tomorrow to find out. That's all for today's edition of the Charterstone Times. Thank you again, as always, for listening, and I hope you will tune in tomorrow to see what else happens in the exciting world of the Charterstone Apartments and Mary Worth.